Hello everyone. So today we'll be discussing basic concepts in child and adolescent development. Our reference will be the book of Brenda Corpus together with Lucas and Borabo, Child and Adolescent Development from Lorimar Publishing House. So these basic concepts are very necessary for us to understand the rest of the discussion in child and adolescent development. So all the students of professional education and all those students who will be taking the licensure examination, this video will be a great help for you. So let us take a look at the basic concepts of child and adolescent development. Okay, so we have now growth, development, maturation, heredity, and environment. So, additional concept which is not written on the screen is learning. Okay? In other videos that we have in these channels, we've already discussed what learning is. So, you'll just have to recall those videos for further understanding. So, the basic concepts, growth, development, maturation, heredity, and environment. Most of the time, growth, development, and maturation, at the same time, learning, are regarded as one concept, meaning people believe, or some of the students believe, that they are one and the same. But there are some differences that we have to take in consideration if we will be taking the licensure examination. Development is actually the general concept here, but this development may be distinctively delineated from growth, maturation, and learning. So let us take a look at the discussion. What is growth? Basically, we define growth as the progressive increase and continuous advancement of the child from birth to maturity. The key word there is increase. So it would mean that when we talk about growth, it is something which is quantitative, meaning you can quantify it, you can count it. So therefore, we regard a particular change in a person as growth when there is an increase in size, when there is an increase in number. So, for instance, Juan now is taller than Michael. We are descriptively talking about growth because height is an increase in size and it is quantitative. Changes in the body which are referring to increases in size are referring to growth. Okay? While development is said to be the gradual and orderly unfolding of the characteristics of the individual as they go through the successive stages of growth. Okay? It will be flashed in your screen, no? Kung ano yung meaning ng development. Ulitin natin yun, ha? Gradual and orderly unfolding of characteristics. In other words, growth may be under development. But, parang sinasabi natin na in order to have development, parang required din na magkaroon ng growth. Bakit? If growth is quantitative in nature, development is qualitative, but it's not plainly qualitative. It is also quantitative, but the quantifiable idea there is undergoing some refinement. So development is quantitative and qualitative refinement of a characteristic. Refinement meaning there's quality of changes. Okay? How do we say that there's quality of changes? If growth is mainly physical, development is not just physical. It can also range from intellectual, social, emotional, psychological changes in the person. So, yun yung sinasabi natin na development. Pagka sinabi natin na, before I do not know how to compute equations in algebra, but because I've learned something, I now understand how to compute algebraic expressions, or how to compute or how to add polynomials. Halimbawa, yun yung specific na idea. If you're gonna notice there are refinement in the characteristics. So, therefore, there is intellectual development. Pero may magko-comment sa inyo, ma'am, learning din yun kasi natutunan niya. Exactly. Because learning is also part of development. Okay? Kaya nga sabi natin, collectively, lahat naman ng nangyayari sa katawan mo ay development. Pero, it can be something that is brought by growth, it is brought by learning, or it may be brought by maturation. And in fact, you have to be reminded of that the other concept, maturation, is the internal growth which is indicated by the state of readiness to engage in a definite type of behavior. What does it mean? Maturation is actually biological. But you have to be reminded of that in order for you to learn, may mga pagkakataon na may maturation requirements muna. Okay? Even if you are very intelligent, if the body is not fully mature, if the biological predisposition is not yet ready for you to do something, to learn something, hindi mangyayari yon. For instance, let's take an example. Syempre, isa sa skill ng isang bata, ng isang infant, na kapag dating ng panahon, ay matututo siya na maglakad. Diba? The baby will start first to crawl before he can walk. Why is it that the baby cannot be taught how to walk before 1 year old? The reason there is because the muscles of the child are not mature enough for him to trigger walking. So if you will be able to see there, requirement nung learning to walk ang maturation ng muscles. Okay? So, nagkakaroon sila ng interpolation. I hope na iintindihan natin yon, no? Na the growth of the muscle, increase in the size of muscle, is giving maturation, and because the muscles are mature enough, then the child learns to walk, and therefore there is development. Why is there a development? Because there's refinement of skill. Where is the refinement of skill there? From the child who is only crawling, there is development. The child now learns to walk. I hope I am clear about that, no? So we're gonna have some formative assessments for that topic later, okay? Now, other concepts that we have here is heredity and environment. Now, let us define heredity and let us define environment. In some of the books, you will notice that heredity is called nature, while environment is called nurture. Heredity is the process of transmitting biological traits from parents to offsprings through genes. Or we define that as the transmission of traits from parents to offspring. Meaning, those characteristics that you have may be coming from the parents, coming from the splitting of the chromosomes and the union of the egg cell and the sperm cell. So therefore, there forms a new being na sa genes niya may mga characteristics na nanggagaling sa mga magulang ninyo na pwedeng i-refine ng environment. Why? Environment is the totality of surrounding conditions that influence the growth and development and survival of an organism. You have to be reminded of that there are only 2 factors affecting human behavior, and those general factors are heredity and environment. See, heredity, it affects the behavior from conception until birth. And remember that those things which are signaled by heredity are somewhat fixed pattern. It defines the limits of your characteristics, while the environment nourishes all your potentials. How are uh, how are potentials nourished by the environment? Let's take a look. We've talked earlier about height. Okay? So, height. So, for instance, there is a child whose height is phenotypically. The height is, ibig sabihin ng phenotypically, you see it physically that the height of the person is 5 feet 1 inches. Okay? Pero, genotypically, meaning doon sa inherited trait niya, the maximum growth that he could have according to heredity is 5'3". So, ano ang gagawin ni environment? Kung sa panahon na ngayon, 5'1 pa lang siya, it can be that the environment will help the person reach its maximum growth potential. So, pwedeng impluwensyahan ni environment kung marireach niya yung maximum growth potential niya or hindi. Yun yung trabaho ni environment. If heredity limits what you can do, the environment would help you reach the potentials embedded in your genes. Okay? Pagdating dun sa mga physical traits na yon. Okay? And you have to be reminded of that the interaction in your general psychology subject, I hope that you've learned that the interaction between heredity and environment is multiplicative in nature. When we say multiplicative, it would mean that behavior is equal to the product of heredity and environment. Hindi po pwede na sa isang karakteristik ninyo ay heredity lang ang nagkaroon ng factor. Hindi po pwede na, itong intelligence ko galing lang to sa environment. Nag-aral kasi ako ng nag-aral wala akong namana sa parents ko. Or it cannot be na, itong intelligence ko na to, it's coming from my parents alone. Innate ito. Natural na sa akin. Kahit di ako mag-aral, alam ko na. It's not like that. But, all of your behaviors are always product of both heredity and environment. We just can say that heredity may be stronger than the environment in the particular behavior, but it will always be that they have that these two factors are intervening in every particular behavior, in all your potentials. Heredity and environment are factors. So these are basic concepts of growth and development, or basic concepts of human development. So I hope that you've learned it, and I hope that it is clear unto you. Now, the next thing that we'll be discussing is the principles of human development. Now, let's move to the next topic. These are the principles of human development. Human development are limited by these factors. Okay? So, first, the development of an organism is the result of the interaction between heredity and environment. We've discussed earlier that the interaction between heredity and environment is multiplicative in nature. It's the product of both heredity and the environment. All behaviors, all the development, all the changes in a person, may it be growth, maturation, or learning, is resulting from the interaction of heredity and environment. Number 2, growth is sequential. Growth is sequential would mean that growth is procedural. Okay? There's a process that we have to follow. There are stages that we have to follow. For instance, even for example, when it comes to your height, when it comes to your weight, there are stages that you have to encounter, that you have to experience before reaching your maximum growth, before reaching your potentials. Number 3, each stage of development has characteristic traits. So we said in number 2 that growth is sequential, meaning there are stages that you have to experience before getting into the maximum potential. Now, number 4, the fourth principle is telling us that each stage of development has characteristic traits. It would mean that in every stage of development, there are some new characteristics that you will be able to learn, and each stage of development is maybe limited by those characteristics, although there are some people who will take each stage of development more advanced than the other. But then you have to be reminded of that each stage of development has unique features. For instance, in cognitive development, sensorimotor stage, these are mainly dominated by the circular reactions. So primary, tertiary circular reactions, secondary circular reactions, and then object permanence. Yun yung main characteristics ng stage of development na yon. So, pag jumump ka dun sa second stage, which is the pre-operational stage, meron na namang mga bagong traits or bagong characteristics na naiiba dun sa unang stage at susunod na stage. Okay? So the fourth one is that maturation or readiness should precede certain types of learning. We mentioned this earlier also, that there are some things that you will learn only when the body is matured enough. The body is ready. Okay? Yung sinabi natin kanina, walking has to be, before you could walk, before child or a toddler could walk, there has to be the readiness or maturation of the muscles. At the same time, you will be able to see later in the Developmental Tasks by Santrock and Havighurst that there are some stages of development which will limit what you can learn. Okay, kaya nga kahit na sa mga subjects natin, there are prerequisite knowledge. Before you will not be able to, for instance, you will not be able to learn higher chemistry if you did not get into the basic chemistry. Kaya rin tayo nagkaroon ng spiral curriculum ay dahil dito sa principle of human development na ito. That there are some things that you have to be ready first before you could learn certain types of topics or lessons or subjects. Number 5, the body tends to maintain a state of equilibrium called homeostasis. Homeostasis means balance. The body has its innate capacity to put yourself into balance. For instance, when you are hungry, the body will be triggering tension, which would cause you to, when you need food, when the body needs food, the body will be triggering tension, which will cause you to feel hungry. And because you are in hunger, you'll be wanting to look for food. Yun yung mga states ng body natin, kung paano nito binabalanse ito, at kung paano nagkakaroon ng homeostasis. Next, number 6, development rates vary. Okay? Development rates vary. What does it mean? Development, there are some skills which are true to every human, true to everyone, true to every stages of development. But then again, you have to be reminded of that development may vary from one person to another. There may be someone who will be able to get into the higher stage of development earlier than others. Kaya nga meron yung mga at the age of 9 months nakapaglakad na. Meron naman yung iba na 13 months na or 14 months na, gumagabay-gabay pa lang. So, although totoo na lahat ay pagdadaanan yung stage na yon, hindi naman pare-pareho o sabay-sabay o magkakapareho kung papaano ma-experience ng isang tao itong development na to. Kaya nga sabi, development rates vary. Another example is this, sa puberty. The first, yung menarche. Yung first na pagdating ng menstruation ng isang babae. Some, grade 5, magkakaroon na sila ng first menstruation. Yung iba, inaabot ng first year high school before they have their first menstruation. Okay? So, development rates vary. Next, number 7, growth is patterned. Growth is patterned. What does it mean by growth is patterned? Okay? First, it's similar to something that growth is sequential. There are stages of development. Pattern, it is patterned also in a sense that because of what you have inherited from your parents, you can in some ways foresee what you will be able to gain with your parents. Meaning, the features of your parents may be somewhat similar to you, but it's not entirely similar. It has pattern, it has stages, it has it follows a trend, but it varies. Yun yung sinasabi natin that growth is patterned. Okay? So these are the basic principles of human development that we have to bear in mind in teaching and especially in taking the licensure examination. Now, aside from the principles of human development, another thing that we have to learn is, of course, the trends in, the approaches to human development. Okay? So, what are these approaches to human development before we get into the trend of human development? Okay? Kung tatanungin ko kayo ngayon, I know that some of you, before looking into the PowerPoint presentation or to the notes, I would like to ask you for a minute. How do you see human development? For you, when does development start? And when does it end? Okay? Pagka ba adolescent, nag-stop na ang development? Hanggang adolescence lang ba? O hanggang adulthood, merong development? Or mas mataas ang rate? Para ba sa'yo, mas mataas ang rate ng development kapag child, during childhood, that during adolescence, or during adulthood? Ano ang approach mo sa human development? How do you view human development? In fact, there are two types or two approaches to human development. The first one is the traditional perspective, and the other one is the lifespan development perspective. What is this traditional perspective? In a traditional perspective, they believe that human development is extensive. When we say extensive, there's huge development from birth until adolescence. And then, there will only be little changes during adulthood or adulthood. Again, there will be little changes in adulthood. So, babagal daw or konti na lang yung magkakaroon ng development pagtanda mo at nag-i-stop na doon sa adolescent stage. Yun yung traditional perspective. At yung iba, ganito yung idea na kapag sinabi nga nila nung matanda na yan, hindi na magbabago yan. Yun yung mga idea ng traditional approaches. Pero, according to Paul Bates, with the lifespan perspective, development takes place until old age. This goes with the saying that we acquire learning every day and there is lifelong learning. When we say lifelong learning, even if we age, we're gonna learn something. We're still gonna learn something. That's lifespan development, no? Sabi dito, the characteristics of lifespan development is that it is lifelong, it is multidimensional, it is plastic, meaning it can be seen throughout the lifespan. It's contextual. Ibig sabihin, learning is contextualized in the sense that it is coming from your environmental experiences. So meaning since it is contextual, it will be different from one person to another. Okay? based on where they interact. And then at the same time, development involves growth. There's maintenance and regulation. Ito yung sinasabi natin kanina sa principle of development that the body has its own capacity to produce balance or homeostasis because development is actually involving growth, maintenance, and regulation of your body. So these are the approaches to human development. Pero pag tinanong ninyo ko, ma'am, ano po yung tamang perspective? Of course, the right perspective in human development is the lifespan development. We develop until old age. We learn things every day, and learning is lifelong. Remember, sinabi natin na under ng development ang learning. Okay? So those are the approaches to human development. I hope it is clear for all of us. And then the next one are the trends in development. Okay? So, pagdating sa development, tandaan natin, meron tayong dalawang trend. Dalawang trend ng development. Ano yung dalawang trend ng development na yon? Una, tinatawag natin ito na cephalocodal trend at yung pangalawa ay proximo-distal trend. Okay? Pagdating sa growth and development, no? Okay, so paki-correct yung nandun sa slide. This is the trend of growth and development, particularly growth because this is physical in nature. So, pagdating sa trend ng growth natin, may tinatawag tayo na cephalocodal trend. Pagdating sa cephalocodal trend, cephalo, meaning it's in the head, okay? Biology major would know that pag sinabing cephalocodal, it's coming from the head. So, pag sinabi natin na ang trend ng growth at development ay cephalocodal, it would mean that growth and development starts from the head papunta sa ibaba. Okay? Head, shoulder, until your feet. Okay. Ano yung manifestation nitong cephalocodal trend? Nakita nyo na ba ang bata, yung baby, for instance, after birth? You have to know and you have to be reminded of that 1/4 of the size of the body of a newborn baby is his head. Imagine, 1/4 of the size of the whole body of the newborn baby is his head. Okay? Yun yung cephalocodal trend. Mas nauunang mag-develop kasi yung head. Kaya ganun yung size ng head ng baby. Until makikita ninyo kapag lumaki na siya at naging full-blown person na siya, the average size of the head, the proportion of the head sa katawan ng isang tao is 1/10. Pero sa baby, 1/4. Bakit? Kasi nga ang trend ay cephalocodal. Unang nagde-develop si head, papunta dito sa shoulder hanggang doon sa mga paa. Kaya pagka makita ninyo, ang liliit ng daliri ng baby, ang liliit ng daliri ng mga paa niya, pati yung mga paa niya, very, very small. Okay? Ang tawag natin doon sa trend na yon ay cephalocodal trend. The next trend of development is proximo-distal trend. Proximo-distal trend. Proximo would mean center. Distal, papalabas. Proximo-distal trend. So, paano yung proximo-distal trend? Another thing that you will be able to see in the growth and development, doon ulit sa reference natin na newborn baby. Malapad yung dibdib niya. Pero ang liliit nung mga braso niya at kamay. Because proximo-distal would mean from the center, which is the torso, papalabas. Proximo-distal. Okay? Kaya, malapad yung dibdib ng baby, tapos maliliit yung mga braso niya, yung kamay, yung daliri niya, kasi nga, nauuna na magkaroon ng growth and development yung proximal part, yung center niya, papalabas. Okay? Yun yung proximo-distal trend na tinatawag. Again, there are two types of developmental trend, growth and development trend, proximo-distal and cephalocaudal trend. Okay? And when it comes to skill, remember again, when it comes to skill, meron tayong tinatawag na phylogenetic skill. Ito rin yung sinasabi kanina sa principle of growth and development. Pag sinabi nating phylogenetic, doon sa mga biology majors, you know that pag sinabing this is the phylogenetic, ibig sabihin these are the genes of particular organism. Ganun din ang tao. Ang tao ay may tinatawag na phylogenetic skills. These are the skills which are universally true to all humankind. In the same manner that animals have their phylogenetic skills. Ano yung phylogenetic skills ng animals? They have their own characteristics which are distinct for them. At sa case din natin, stages of development are phylogenetic. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Pagdadaanan natin ang stages of development. At yun ay procedural. Hindi po pwedeng magbago sa ibang human. Example, you will not be able to see a person who walked first before he could crawl. Okay? Nauna talaga, nadadapa muna ang baby. Tapos, susunod, magko-crawl yan hanggang sa makalakad yan, hanggang sa makatakbo yan. Wala kayong makikita na tao na nauna na tumakbo, tapos sumunod, di na siya makatakbo, lumakad na lang, nag-crawl na, tapos, yon, hindi pa baliktad. The skill is phylogenetic. Okay? Other phylogenetic skills of human, aside from walking, talking, human beings are rational beings. They have their own capacity to think and decide on their own because they have their intellect and will. That's also a phylogenetic skill. That's why we have cognitive development theories. Kasi nga, tayo ay rational being. So that's phylogenetic skill. Okay, so the next one will be the concept of developmental tasks by Havighurst. Okay, let us first explain what developmental task is. Imagine a ladder, imagine a stair. Okay, imagine a stair. Developmental task would mean that in every step of that stair, there is a particular age group. And in every age group, there is a particular set of skills which a child could do. This would imply that as teachers, we have to understand that our learners have limitations based on this age, based on their age and based on their cognitive ability. Age is paired with stage of development, which is also paired with specific set of skills that they can do and that they have to experience first in order to get into the next step of the stair. Yun yung tinatawag natin na developmental task. Kung minsan yung halimbawa, bilang teacher, I hope you did not encounter this when you were in elementary, or I hope kung naaalala nyo pa, no, yung bang papakountin natin ang ating estudyante, count the stars inside the box. Pero ang ating mga estudyante ay nasa kindergarten at gusto nating gawin na mas challenging sa kanila yon. At ang challenge natin, yung mga stars na ika-count nila dun sa box, disarrange. Ibig sabihin nun, nakascatter. Before mo gawin yun, tatanungin mo muna yung sarili mo. Based on their developmental tasks, based on the age of my learners, based on their developmental tasks, are they ready to count things which are disarranged? Kaya na ba talaga nila o hindi pa? Yun yung limitations na ibinibigay sa atin ng developmental task. Hindi natin sinasabi na bakit di tayo mag-pause ng challenges dito sa mga estudyante natin by doing this or doing that. remember that ang stage of development ay may limitasyon. At kinakailangan nating i-prepare ang mga estudyante natin na matutunan yung mas complex na task sa pamamagitan ng mga basic na task na nakapaloob dun sa stage of development kung nasaan ang ating estudyante. So, ano ang sinasabi ng concept of developmental task? Sabi dito ni Robert Havighurst, it is the one that arises at certain period in our life, the successful achievement of which leads to happiness and success with latter tasks, while failure leads to unhappiness, social disapproval, and difficulty with latter tasks. Ito yung developmental task na ito. Because this developmental task doesn't just entail cognitive changes, but at the same time, it also entails social changes in the person, emotional changes in the person, and then psychological changes, which will actually impact the life of the person in the latter task, meaning in the latter stage of development. Okay? At aside from Havighurst, another person who have conceptualized this developmental task theory is Santrock. And Santrock identified 6 stages of development. These are the prenatal period, which are from conception to birth. And then we also have infancy, the early childhood, and we also have here the middle and late childhood, adolescence, and then of course we have the early adulthood, middle adulthood, and then the late adulthood. Or in short, 6 stages lang kasi siya eh. So clustered na si adulthood. Although we are trying to get into the differences doon sa mga characteristics ng mga taong ito dito sa tatlong developmental tasks ng adulthood. Okay? So tingnan natin isa-isa. Let's get into infancy. I hope you can see it on your screen. In the infancy period, ang sabi dito, it involves tremendous growth from a single cell to an organism complete with brain and behavioral capabilities. At this stage of development, dito natin makikita yung pagsasama ng genes ni mother at genes ni father, at dito nabubuo yung mga hereditary skills ng isang bata na magiging reason for his potentials kapag ka pinanganak na siya. And then, after birth, you experience there yung infancy. Infancy is, of course, from birth to 2 years old. Yun. Lagi nyo tatandaan yun. Infancy, from birth to 2 years old. This is the time of extreme dependence on adult. These are the point of time that many psychological activities are just beginning, like language, symbolic thought, sensorimotor coordination, and social learning. Remember that during infancy, of course, the infant is very much dependent with the parents. Kahit dahil dependent siya, kinakailangan niya ng suporta ng environment niya. And you have to be reminded of that different learning theories and different developmental theories later on, which we will be discussing, will tell us that a lot of infancy experiences could impact or influence the behavior of the person in the future. Okay? Yun yung sa behaviorism and then psychoanalysis, makikita natin kung ano yung nangyayari during infancy. Now, the next stage of development is early childhood. During the early childhood, which is the end of infancy from until 5 to 6 years, dito na yung preschool stage. Ang sabi natin, young children learn to become more self-sufficient and to care for themselves, develop school readiness skills, and spend many hours in play with peers. During this period of time, during the early childhood, nandun yung expansion ng playtime ng bata. At dito rin nagkakaroon ng social skills yung ating youngsters, no? They experience socializing with people. They experience different changes in their environment at the preschool stage. And dito rin nakikita natin yung pagbabago dun sa cognition ng bata. That's why it is during the early childhood that we say na kinocoin natin na this is the formative years of the child. Tandaan natin yun na because most of the time, tinatanong at what stage of development is the child's formative years. Pag sinabi ng formative years, ito yung pagkakataon na binubuo natin yung values ng bata. Binubuo natin yung orientation noong bata. Maganda na during this early childhood, during this stage of development, mabuo natin yung concept ng bata of morality, of values, of what is important, of what is right and wrong. Kasi ito yung stage talaga na formation ng schema noong bata. Okay? Next, we also have middle and late childhood. At this point of development, nasa elementary na yung bata. And then, the fundamental skills of the child in reading, writing, arithmetic are mastered, and the child is formally exposed to the large world and its culture. During this early childhood, mas nag-expand na yung knowledge ng bata at nawawala yung play activity. Kung hindi, nagiging focused ang bata into academic tasks, reading, writing, arithmetic, and other things that are school-oriented. So, yun yung makikita natin dito sa estudyante sa batang ito. And since ang bata at this stage of development is in school, dito rin actually nabubuo yung concrete operational stage. That the stage is actually learning, that the child is actually learning to contextualize and to learn things according to how the world really is telling what it is. Kasi during early childhood, ang conception ng bata ay kung ano yung nakikita niya. So, ibig sabihin ng kung anong nakikita, self-perspective yon. Pero at this point of time, during the middle childhood, kaya na niyang i-contextualize yung mga nangyayari sa paligid niya. Next, we have adolescence. What is this adolescent stage? Ito yung sinasabing transition period. During the stage of adolescence, ito yung sinasabi natin hindi ka na bata, hindi ka pa matanda. Anong nangyayari dito? The stage of in-between whereby there are dramatic gains in height and weight. There are changes in body contour and the development of sexual characteristics such as enlargement of the breast, development of pubic and facial hair, and the deepening of the voice, meaning the primary and the secondary sexual characteristics are now developing, onset of it, since dito na yung puberty stage. And since this stage of development is remarkable because of the changes in the body, ito rin yung stage of confusion. So, dito sa developmental task na ito, at this point of time, contemporarily, what the child needs are mental support. Okay? Protection doon sa mental awareness noong bata and mental wellness niya. Why? Kasi ito yung in-between stage. In-between stage would mean confusion stage. Okay? Na para bang hindi niya alam kung saan siya sasama. Will he go with children or will he go with adult? Ito yung adolescent stage. And then of course, we have now the adulthood. Adulthood are divided into early, middle, and late. For early adulthood, it's the point of time that you establish your own personal and economic independence. This is the point of time that you seek for a job. You try to be intimate with someone, meaning you get into a relationship with people around you, with your family, of course, and then with the opposite sex or with friends. So, During the middle childhood naman, middle adolescent naman, ang nangyayari sa atin dito, this is now the point of time that we try to expand personal and social involvement. And we take in responsibility. Responsibility in the sense that there are times that you have your own family, you have to rear children. So you take in responsibility not just to yourself, but also to another person or to other people. It's the point of time also that you support the community or you get involved with works for other people and not just for yourself. And then during the late adulthood, it is the time for adjustment kasi there are decreasing strength and then deteriorating health. This is the point of time of your retirement, and then sometimes ito na yung point that you are reflecting if you've done what you should have, what you want to do in your life. Dito na yung sinasabi ni Eric Erikson that a stage of integrity versus despair. So that's the stages of development according to Santrock under the concept of developmental tasks. Okay? Now, before we end this video, I just would like to counter check if you've learned something through some of the formative assessments that we're gonna have. And before we reveal the answer, I want to teach you how to rationalize things. So rationalizing things would mean that you're not going to look at your notes or you're not gonna recall the video or you are not going to rewind the video. But what you're gonna do is that you will select the best among the choices and then you're gonna rationalize in a sense that you will think of what each of the options mean. Will it answer the question or there is a better answer for it? Remember that questions in professional education, may it be child or other subjects, are in form of analysis. So meaning when you analyze, you have to think thoroughly and deeply and to get into the situation being described. First, not more than what is asked. Okay? The question is sufficient enough. Ibig sabihin nun, huwag mong dugtungan yung tanong. Huwag kang mag-istorya tungkol dun sa tanong. Yung tanong lang ang sasagutin ninyo. Okay? So, sagutin ninyo on your own. Think of the answer. Choose your answer. And then, i-verify ninyo, ay, tama yung sagot ko after you reveal the right answer. Okay? Huwag niyong ipa-fast forward sa correct answer. Magkaroon kayo ng sariling sagot. Kung maganda nga, ang mas maganda nga, you write down your answer. And then, checkan din ninyo kung tama o mali yung inyong magiging sagot. Okay, let's start the formative test. Okay, so let us have question number 1 for formative test. Number 1, what is the best intervention? Okay. Jason, ikat mo. Okay, so we're gonna answer that in the next video because that's for Freud's stages of development. So you move to the next slide for the first lesson, for the first lesson in the formative assessment. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the first question for the basic concepts in child and adolescent development is this. What law, or it is the law of readiness by Edward Thorndike, may be attributed to what concept? A, learning. B, maturation. C, growth. D, development. Look into it carefully. What is the law of readiness by Edward Thorndike? The law of readiness states that the person has to be biologically ready before he will be able to answer things correctly and before he will be able to get the skill which is required for him to learn. So what is the correct answer? Let us see. Let us see. Is it letter A, Learning, according to our definition, in some of the videos, learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior brought by experience. Does it answer the law of readiness? Yes or no? Maturation, we have mentioned earlier, is one of the factors for you to learn something, because you have to be ready first biologically before you can learn the task. Letter C, growth is quantitative in nature. Letter D is development is a quantitative and qualitative refinement of things. So the correct answer here is letter B, maturation. I hope you got it correctly. Okay, next question. Okay, next question. The pandemic brought changes in the body weight of many children and young adolescents. What concept is described? The pandemic brought changes in the body weight of many children and young adolescents. What concept is described? A, learning, B, maturation, C, growth, D, development. Question is easy, so what is the answer? Okay. Of course, the answer is growth, because it is mainly an increase in size. Body weight is an increase in size, so therefore the answer is letter C, growth. Okay, I hope you got that correctly. The next question is, in the middle of the discussion, teacher Karen noticed that most of her preschool students are not anymore interested. Following the principle that the body tends to maintain homeostasis, what should teacher Karen do to recover their interest? Letter A, cut the discussion and give them an activity. Letter B, use colorful visual aids. Letter C, have an icebreaker. Letter D, let them play for a while. What is the answer? The principle of growth and development being discussed here is all about homeostasis. So what are we going to do so that children will maintain homeostasis? Okay, I'm giving you time to answer. Okay. Are you going to do letter A, cut the discussion and give them an activity? Will it recover their interest? Of course, the answer is no. In fact, it will give more frustration. Okay? Letter B, use colorful visual aids. Adding color to the visual aids is okay, but then again, it doesn't follow the maintenance of homeostasis. Homeostasis would mean that the tension inside the body, which is present to the children at this point of time, what is that tension? Boredom, will not be answered by posting colorful visual aids. Letter C, have an icebreaker. By giving icebreaker, like exercise, like a game, or like singing or dancing, will actually make children more lively and would outlive the tension being experienced because of boredom. So this can be the correct answer. Letter D, let them play for a while. Playing, of course, can make children or help children recover their interests. But then again, we have to choose. So if letter D could also be the answer, we have to choose the best answer. Now, between letter C and letter D, what should be the best answer? If both of this could really help in recovering homeostasis, the next thing that you have to do is among or between these two, which could be relevant to my teaching. which could be relevant to my teaching, to my topic, to the way the lesson I would like it to be. Kung gusto ko pa rin maging formal yung discussion ko, ano yung dapat kong piliin sa dalawa na ito? Of course, the best answer is letter C, have an icebreaker. Okay? So I hope again that you got it correctly. Next. Okay, the next question is, Teacher Mary Rose noticed that Josette is taller than the boys in class despite having the same age. What does this imply about human development? Letter A, development patterns are sequential and orderly. B, development varies. C, development is gradual. Letter D, development is complex. Okay, this is again a question about the principles of human development. Okay. So we've discussed earlier that even if we are of the same stage of development, some would be able to go to the next stage earlier than the others. Because even if the skills are phylogenetic in nature, some will be able to achieve basic skills earlier than the others. So here, the answer is letter B, development varies. Remember also that for boys and girls, you see here, Josette is taller than the boys in class despite having the same age. Remember this, guys. The growth part, growth part would mean the sudden progressive growth of a person. Young girls achieves their growth spurt earlier than boys. That's the reason why during the elementary years, girls are somewhat taller than boys. Then once they go to high school, magugulat na lang sila, mas matatangkad na yung mga lalaki sa kanila. Dahil mas maaga ang growth spurt ng babae kesa sa lalaki. Okay? Next. Okay. So, end na muna natin yung ating discussion na yon. So, the next video we'll be discussing a new topic in the next video, which is Sigmund Freud's view in psychosexual development. So, that's all for this lesson. So I hope you've learned something, and then you have questions, you just give your questions in the comment box, and then wait for the next video, which is psychosexual development by Sigmund Freud. Thank you so much.